My name is Kate Rubicava. I'm the CEO for the Utah Nonprofits Association. I use the pronouns she, her. And with a slight twist this month, my blog will include a conversation between Brandy and myself. Brandy is UNA's Director of Community Relationships. She uses the pronouns she, her, and in her role, she works closely with all of our members. Together, she and I manage the UNA Help Desk at UNA, which means that we field a lot of messages from leaders, frontline workers, board members, and community folks about nonprofits. Over the past year, there have been some frightening trends bubbling, so we wanted to chat about what we're seeing and what we're hearing. The overall hope here is to have us collectively think about the ways that we can get ahead of some of the issues that we're seeing. So, Brandy, what are you hearing from our members about lately?
Oh, wow. I talk with and support our members in a multitude of ways daily. But there are really three discussion topics that come to the forefront of the conversations on a pretty regular basis. The first is where to post and find candidates for positions that have been open for a while. These conversations usually move away from where to post because the UNA job board is awesome to being focused on what is in the job description. Removing buzzwords from a job advertisement can have a big impact. Things like fast-paced work environment can also mean to candidates that you're understaffed deliberately. Or saying things such as, we're a family, can also mean to potential candidates that they will spend more time at work than they will with their own family. Or stating that there is a competitive pay when candidates can see what other employers are offering and the pay is not competitive. We also go through a lot of where to find funding, including how to find the right people to talk to, where to source potential funding opportunities, and what can be done to diversify funding streams. And the other big piece that I have the opportunity to talk with our members about is ways to engage the board of directors, both the new members and returning members. These conversations usually begin with how to engage board members in fundraising, but can quickly turn to discussions on how each individual is engaged in the work of the nonprofit and how their unique skill set can be maximized.
Oh, that's really interesting, Brandy. Thank you. And I love that you talk about buzzwords and compensation disclosure so openly with our members. So tell me, what are the reactions that you're hearing when you bring those items up?
Well, we always try to acknowledge the difficult process that we have to go through to get to the end result we're all working towards. Not only are we challenged to meet the expectations of candidates, but we're also held accountable to the policies and procedures of our organizations. The reactions range from acceptance and empowerment to make the changes necessary to discussions on ways to bring leadership into the conversation. What I try to emphasize is the things we have control over. For example, if you're not able to update policies and procedures right now, what if you considered the job post differently? Rather than a job description, what if it were formatted to read more like an advertisement? My biggest goal is to help our members find ways to rethink the ways we have always done things into our new way of work and what our society needs from us. I know and respect that this is a shift that we are all working on navigating, and it's together that we can find a way through it.
Good point. So what are some of the pressures that leaders are facing right now?
To be competitive in the job market right now, leaders need to increase pay. Many leaders know this, but haven't not had access to the capital to make this a reality. And then this is a two-sided problem for many as well, because not only do you need to increase pay for candidates, but you also need to increase the pay of current employees. This becomes further difficult, further exacerbated by the limitations from funding sources to allow for the monies to go towards staff compensation, as this is seen as overhead. But without the staff, the mission can't be achieved. This is why it is so important for the public to donate to nonprofits they know and care about, as private donations are not restricted and can be used to improve pay and benefits for the staff.
Oh, thank you for that. So I'm going to switch gears just ever so slightly. Tell me, Brandy, what would you want pre-pandemic Brandy to know about this time that we're living in right now?
Whew. Okay. Prior to the pandemic, I never would have thought we would be having so many conversations around work-life balance. The need to be flexible and understanding of the whole person who comes to work is one of the most important aspects we should be focused on. Remote work will not only become a norm, but will become a highly sought after work environment. This will be difficult for us to transition to, but I believe it will be necessary for the sustainability of our missions. Now it's your turn, Kate. What would you tell pre-pandemic Kate?
Part of me wants to giggle at all of that, but the realities of remote work and serving different geographies is not something that requires too much thought and planning, at least really not in the way that we thought about it when UNA was doing its strategic planning for 2020 to 2022. So when we were doing that planning in that document, we had this whole section mapped out for connecting better with rural regions and creating rural infrastructure so that we could provide better, more consistent service. As an organization, we laid the best of plans and we really thought hard about how we could make all of that work. And part of me feels like it was just a tad overthought. And the truth, though, is that we acted in a way that we knew, because pre-pandemic Kate had no idea that this transition to remote work and virtual programming that the pandemic really ignited for all of us would in fact break down the barriers that we had for our members in rural communities and along the Wasatch Front. So a question now for you, Brandy. Okay, as a leader, some of the hardest things that I experience are making sweeping decisions that impact everyone. So as an example, shifting to remote work is one such thing. And I'm curious, Brandy, how has this shift to remote work at UNA helped you focus and or adapt to this new existence that we have?
Ooh, being remote at UNA has made us more accessible and able to connect with nonprofits from all over Utah. Prior to the pandemic, our services were available in person only, and we were brainstorming how we could be more virtual, like you were saying before. This shift created the opportunity and necessity to move us online, and we are reaching more people and nonprofits than ever before. Personally, I have really appreciated not having to drive so much, saving time and money on gas by walking from my kitchen to my home office to start my workday. I will say that I had to learn how to turn off work at the end of the day, though, so that I could be present for my family. Now that I have learned how to balance this, I find that my time is more wisely spent at work so that I can maximize my time with my family and loved ones.
Yeah, I too am feeling that, Brandy. Also, as a leader, I'm finding that these past 2 years have really shown me that there really are different ways that we can work, and the ways that we've sort of always, and the reasoning that we've always done it this way, approach, in my opinion, needs to sort of be dusted off and really tossed out the window. What is an example, Brandy, of a policy that all should adopt, knowing what we know now?
I can jump right into this: hybrid work, including looking at each position at the organization and determining if that position can be done outside of the office, and hear me out, potentially outside of normal office hours. And this may not be for all nonprofits, but if you are thinking about opening a position to be remote and want to expand your applicant pool to other states, you'll need to look at the hiring requirements of the state the candidates are in or that you will be recruiting from. And I just want to do another plug. UNA members have access to free HR legal consultation to help with this.
As always, Brandy, you're looking at plugging those membership benefits. I love it.
Every day.
So we really had an awakening regarding the many ways that we can engage in paid work. I personally am loving the important emphasis that work-life balance has had over the last 2 years. And I'm so grateful to be part of a team that shows grace and respect for one another. But I also know it's not always sunshine and roses out there. So it makes me ask this of you, Brandy, off the top of your head, do you know of or have suggestions of 1 to 3 things that nonprofits should stop doing right now that would help their staff?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to start out with a big one, and this is kind of a culture shift, but please stop being scared to talk about pay. Create transparency around compensation and benefits, including please post the pay with all job postings and having honest conversations amongst the staff about compensation. Also, please stop unpaid internships. Create a plan to stop this. These programs devalue the contributions of interns while also placing undue financial burden on them to meet the needs of life. One last thing, if it is at all possible, look at the values you have in your organization. Are these visible both externally and internally? If you've not identified these or they are not visible to those you serve, both the staff and the community members, consider bringing in an outside facilitator to help identify and instill them into your work. Your staff will appreciate it, and the community will see your efforts when you lead with your values.
Values-based, so important. So nonprofits by nature are mission focused, right? Generally focusing on the clients that we serve. And what I see often is that employees and culture are overlooked. Am I just dreaming this?
I don't think you're dreaming this at all. Many times in our nonprofit work, we are so focused on who we serve and the value we bring, but do not make that same commitment to the people who make our missions come alive. Our values should be both external and internal in focus so that everyone who is touched by our missions experiences the very best of us.
So the world is starting to shift back to this pre-pandemic idea with all of the activities that are involved in it, like coffee and lunch meetings. Tell me, what are some things that we should consider as professionals?
Okay, I'm gonna throw out some jargon that we've heard over these past few years, but come with me for a moment. It's not a popular term, but the new normal includes being aware that not everyone is able to go back to the way it was before. Eating food together is a great way to build relationships, but also taking into consideration that not everyone is able to do that can be just as beneficial. Please be understanding of others who would love to meet in person, but really cannot participate in activities that were normal before the pandemic.
Brandy, I really appreciate your comments about participation in meetings because I hear you. There really is no substitution to connecting with someone in person. There's a certain vibe and a feeling really that you get around being, with other humans and our animals. But what has really struck me is the need to balance the productivity of an in-person meeting, especially around food. At these types of meetings, we're asking people to travel, to take notes, to be prepared with all sorts of answers to questions that are not yet known yet, then expecting that person to remember everything they said they'd act on and while eating, right? And it just seems like a tough balancing act.
It is tough because we want to connect and get to know each other more. But maybe we can rethink how we do this and the goals we want to accomplish. Maybe instead of a working lunch, what if we knew the goal was to get to know one another better? So instead we went for a walk through a park, then set up a virtual meeting to go through the work needed to make the partnership, the mission come alive. I really think, once again, this is a shift in how we think about relationship building in a post-pandemic world, but maybe a refocus on the purpose of what we do and how we do it will help to balance both the needs of our organizations and the needs of the humans we bring into our work.
I will say this, factoring in all of that, virtual and remote work, in this world has had an unforeseen negative effect, right? Because it's eliminated all of that drive time and processing time that we used to have when we had meetings in person and or when we were at the office. And it's forcing us to feel compelled and pressured really to schedule everything back to back.
Whew, I am feeling that totally and completely. But I'm also trying to not be led by my calendar while also meeting the expectations of those we serve on a daily basis. I will say this though, if it is at all possible, designate days as no meeting days. At UNA, we have no meeting Fridays, and I love that I have a full day to get things done and collaborate with my colleagues. We also schedule 2 weeks in the year that we call our dark weeks, where we do not have any meetings and are able to focus on big projects, getting caught up, or taking care of the things we just don't always have the time for. I really think this comes down to being okay with saying no. Let that sit in for a minute. And then setting time for you to not be in meetings to empower yourself and your team to take care of those nagging tasks or the 2D email inbox, which I'm sometimes guilty of. I will say this though, it is not perfect and you need to hold yourself accountable. And I'm going to put a plug in. Leaders need to lead by example.
Speaking of leaders,
oh, yes, absolutely. Being a leader is really hard. Running an organization is tough. I can see it in your face. And I've known you long enough to know there is likely a lot that I don't know about the challenges of your position. But I want to know, if you could tell all the nonprofit executive directors and CEOs in Utah one thing, what would it be?
So since you've known me long enough, you should know that I'm 100% going to give you more than just one thing here. And just like being honest and speaking freely, here's my advice. In no particular order. Trust your team. They will have your back. And unless it's absolutely required that you work outside of your regularly scheduled shift, please do not work. So that means no emails, text messages, or events outside of your regular working hours. I get that some of those things are required, but my ask is to adjust your regularly scheduled day in the week. Your personal life and your family life, they really do deserve your attention. The other thing is delete your work email from your phone. And just, a pro tip here, keep the calendar connected on your phone. It will reduce some tension, but deleting that work email has done wonders for me over the past couple of years.
Same here.
Pandemic or not, extending grace to yourself and others is so important, and it will go a long way when you most need it. Now, use all of your PTO. I mean, all of it. Book time away right now. Like you can press pause and go to your calendar, book that time away. You will be so excited when that future self of yours comes up and realizes that you've got a week off. It'll do you good. And the last thing is, and this is just so important, your staff are following your lead. They mimic what you do. They treat others the way that you treat them. Everything is incredibly cyclical. Be the leader that you needed and wanted when it was the most difficult time in your life or the most inspirational time in your life.
Oh, I love it. Use your PTO.
Yeah, use it, all of it. Brandy, I am so glad that we got together to do this. Thank you so much for going along this conversation journey for my blog in May of 2022.
Thank you so much for having me here. This is a great message. And I really hope that more of our members reach out and know that you're not alone. We're here to support, and we're just so grateful to be a part of your missions journey through our communities.
Thank you.